Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right in today with a clean, calm, and totally objective look at the biological realities behind peptide therapies, specifically focusing on molecules like sermorelin and NAD+. Now, if you've been anywhere online recently, you've definitely seen the hype. But today, we're cutting through all that noise to look strictly at what the science actually says. But before we go any further, I have to give our strongest caution right up front. This explainer is strictly for general educational purposes. It is absolutely not medical advice. We want to be completely honest with you. Human evidence for most peptide and longevity claims is super early and incredibly limited. There are zero guarantees of efficacy or living longer, and individual results will absolutely vary. All right, here's our clinical roadmap for today. 1, the basics of peptides. 2, sermorelin and NAD+. 3, the honest evidence. 4, sourcing and safety risks. And 5, clinical oversight and process.
Let's just dive right into Section 1, the basics of peptides, understanding the building blocks.
You know, what's really fascinating here is that peptides aren't some weird artificial invention. They're just short chains of amino acids, basically smaller versions of proteins. Your body naturally makes thousands of them, and they act as these crucial signaling molecules, literally telling your cells exactly what to do. Actually, well-established FDA-approved medications like insulin are peptides. And honestly, that legitimate biology is exactly why this whole category gets so much attention. But here's the trap, right? Because some peptides, like insulin, are powerful, proven drugs, it is super tempting to assume that any peptide marketed for wellness must carry that exact same clinical certainty. That assumption is exactly where people get into trouble, and it's why we really need to look closer at the specific molecules being promoted today. Which brings us to Section 2, sermorelin and NAD+, the most asked about molecules. You look around online, and the internet is promising these massive, life-changing things. You'll see claims about turning back the clock, boundless energy, anti-aging miracles. But we're here to draw a hard line and separate that aggressive internet marketing from the actual, measured clinical evidence. Let's start with sermorelin. It's a synthetic peptide that signals your pituitary gland to release growth hormone. Now, the regulatory history here is absolutely crucial. Sermorelin was actually FDA approved back in 1997 for treating growth hormone deficiency in kids. But the manufacturer discontinued it in 2008 for commercial reasons. So today, it's no longer an FDA-approved product. Instead, people access it through compounding pharmacies. And it is incredibly important to understand that compounded medications are not FDA-approved, nor are they reviewed by the FDA for safety or effectiveness like approved drugs are.
Then there's NAD+. This is a coenzyme found in literally every single cell, and it's central to your energy metabolism. Now, it's a proven biological fact that NAD+ levels appear to decline as we age. However, there is a massive gap between that biological fact and the completely unproven marketing claims that boosting it somehow guarantees a reversal of aging or a restoration of youthful energy.
We've got to be radically transparent about this. The biology is super intriguing, for sure. But anyone promising you guaranteed anti-aging results or a fountain of youth is selling you certainty that the current science simply hasn't earned yet. Let's move on to Section 3, the honest evidence, and see what the data actually says when you strip away the promotional hype. The reality here is pretty sobering, but it's something we need to hear. A huge chunk of the excitement around these therapies comes strictly from animal and lab studies. And in science, animal studies frequently fail to translate to humans. Where human trials do exist, they are incredibly limited. They're often very small, short-term, and focused on surrogate markers, like blood levels, rather than the actual longevity outcomes people care about. So, to put it simply, no peptide is a proven fountain of youth. For example, human studies do fairly consistently show that NAD+ precursors are well tolerated, and they can successfully raise NAD+ levels in the blood. But translating those elevated blood levels into real, meaningful anti-aging outcomes, that's where the science thins out dramatically. The large, high-quality human trials you'd need to actually prove those benefits simply don't exist at this time. Knowing that the science is early, let's transition to Section 4, sourcing and safety risks. We need to talk about why where it comes from matters most. There is a really sharp contrast between unregulated products and responsible medical pathways. So many peptides sold online are labeled research use only, and they're distributed through this unregulated gray market. These are absolutely not intended for human use. They carry huge risks: unknown purity, dangerous contamination, incorrect dosing. On the flip side, sourcing from a licensed U.S. pharmacy under a licensed provider's oversight is specifically designed to mitigate those exact safety and quality risks.
And listen, these aren't just theoretical risks. The quality problems are heavily documented. Recent FDA-related inspection findings from 2024 and 2025 found that a substantial share of compounded sermorelin samples actually tested below their labeled potency. Even worse, they had elevated sterility failures compared to other compounded products. Add in the fact that any injection inherently carries the risk of infection and injection site reactions, and you can see why rolling the dice on unverified vials is incredibly dangerous.
Plus, the regulatory environment is genuinely in flux right now. The FDA has increased its scrutiny on certain compounded peptides. So I'll say it again. Just because a medication is dispensed by a compounding pharmacy does not mean it's FDA-approved. A responsible provider is always going to be completely transparent with you about what's approved, what's compounded, and what is just plain unproven.
With those serious safety risks in mind, let's explore Section 5, Clinical Oversight and Process, the responsible path forward.
If you're looking into these options through a telehealth platform, there's a strict protocol that should be followed. It has to start with a comprehensive health questionnaire. A licensed provider must review your medical history and current meds to screen for serious contraindications. Like a history of cancer is a massive red flag when discussing growth hormone-related peptides. Only if it's deemed medically appropriate should a prescription be made, which is then fulfilled by a licensed U.S. pharmacy and followed up with ongoing provider oversight to monitor your health.
When you source responsibly and use proper clinical channels, transparent pricing is key. Customized options typically start around $79 a month for NAD+, and around $299 a month for sermorelin. But keep in mind, your specific plan, the product, the dose, it's all completely personalized based on what a licensed provider determines is medically appropriate for you. This actually brings up a really vital philosophy when it comes to responsible care. Eligibility is always determined by a licensed medical professional. A truly responsible provider might look at your history and say, hey, this therapy isn't right for you. Being told no isn't a failure of the system. That's a feature, not a bug. It means the system is prioritizing your health and safety over just making a quick sale. So to wrap up our explainer today, the takeaway is pretty clear. The biology of peptides is super fascinating, but if you're curious about them, you deserve straight answers, transparent pricing, and real professional clinical oversight. You don't deserve hype, and you definitely shouldn't be risking your health on some anonymous, unverified vial you bought off the internet. I want to leave you with a final thought to reflect on today. As the science continues to evolve in this really exciting but largely unproven space, will you prioritize evidence and safety by consulting a licensed healthcare provider to see if any treatment is right for your unique health history? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and always remember to demand evidence over enthusiasm.